Our Locked On MLB playoff preview rolls on now with the ALDS that has already been decided. We are talking with the Chicago White Sox and the Houston Astros. Host Locked On White Sox and Locked On Astros. We've got with you Chris Tannehill and Htown Wheelhouse, better known as Brett Chansey, or maybe he's better known as Htown
I was going to
Wheelhouse.
say, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Sure.
We get it all flipped one way or the other, but this is going to be a really fun series. I think both teams match up very well in what they do best. First off, I know that you guys have been excited with the way the season has ended for both of you. The White Sox had kind of sewn up everything a little bit earlier than the Astros did, but I think the Astros felt pretty confident in their positioning. So I want to start with you both. I want to ask a question for both of you, and I want to start with Chris. When did you know this was going to happen? What point were you like, all right, the White Sox got this?
I would say, it was a rough ride to get here. I know it's been a formality for most of the season, but the Eloy injury starting the season was certainly a curveball, a monkey wrench thrown into this whole thing. And then Luis Roberts' injury. There were times early on in the first month or so where you felt like, ooh, this may not go as planned, but you saw guys start to step up. The first instance being Brian Goodwin when Rick Hahn picked him up off waivers after Pittsburgh let him go. And his first at bat, he hits a 3-run homer against the Tigers. So you kind of got that feeling then. That was like around May, and you're like, oh, everyone's kind of stepping up here, filling the void of all these massive injuries that they've had, and the train just keeps moving. I've used the analogy all season long. It is like hopping aboard a moving train, and it's, the rising tide raising all boat scenarios here. So it's been a rough ride to get here, and it's been filled with ups and downs along the way, but I think this team knew that they were the class of the division very early on with all the injuries, and the starting pitching staff has just anchored this whole thing and kept them stable the entire season.
From my point of view, I think pretty much after the trade deadline, they went on a really nice run. Now, they were not exactly playing powerhouses when they played the Royals and the Cubs and the Twins, but they won a bunch of games, and I think at that point they put a little bit of distance between them and the soon-to-be Guardians of Cleveland. And one of the things I feel it should be encouraging for White Sox fans for the last couple of weeks is I think they've been playing pretty well, and they've been playing pretty well against Cincinnati. They've won. They ended the season on a positive note. I think I would be really worried if they kind of limped into the playoffs on a losing record. I think that they've got a couple of good starts from the starters, and most importantly, Rodon looking pretty good in his last start. I think having him in the playoff rotation is going to be a real positive.
Well, we'll see about that. He's going to throw on Tuesday, and if you guys haven't been paying attention, Rodon, the box score will indicate that, oh yeah, it was a nice clean outing for Rodon, but the velocity was down more than just a tick. He was topping out 93 was the highest he hit on, and he was sitting around 90, 91. Now, he did sort of have a different game plan out there in his last outing where he was showcasing more of the changeup to keep these hitters off balance, but real seldom usage of the slider, which is his big out pitch, and he did not use that almost at all. I think maybe 6 times against the Reds lineup. So they're very concerned about him actually heading into the postseason, and I think you're in a situation here where he's going to have about a couple weeks here, almost 2 weeks from the last outing until he's scheduled to throw. Let's say they throw him in a game 4 if they're fortunate enough to make it to that point. If he throws in a game 4, I think they're very much, it's just going to be, all right, how many innings can you go at full bore? Because, he hit a wall around 2 or 3 weeks ago where he's been a different guy, and they've been trying to do this as cautiously and as smart as they possibly could with resting him and getting him 6 days of rest instead of 5 every step of the way, and then ILing him for a long period of time. But since he's come back from the IL, he has not looked good, and the results have been okay, but I think everyone's very concerned, and rightfully so, unless this is a guy also who's a free agent at the end of the year. He's a Scott Boras client, so there's a lot of layers here going on, and I think Tony La Russa seems to be just done with it all. He's basically looking at this like, all right, just let me know if you're up or down, like a football coach mentality. Let me know if you're up or down, and we'll throw you out there. And he's going to throw on Tuesday bullpen, and they're going to see what he can do. But I would not be surprised if he goes later in the series and they piggyback him with Kopech or Ronaldo Lopez.
Well, one thing, at least visually, for the White Sox that is positive is that the last time they won a playoff series was against the Houston Astros. Now, it was a very different situation. It was a World Series back then.
Mm.
But the Astros are back as the division champs. And H-Town, I must say that I give the Astros a lot of credit for taking on the late charge from Oakland and late charge from Seattle,
Yes.
that they clinched before making it more interesting. They won the games they needed to win so they can line things up that this weekend with Oakland became a formality. I think they even used Greinke out of the bullpen to sort of give him a tune up. Tell me where you think the state of this team is, which has had wild streaks. It's very Yankee. The Yankees have had wild streaks, and the Astros have had wild streaks where they've had winning streaks where they look like, oh my God, the World Series is coming back to Houston. And then there have been times like, oh my God, they are not going to, are they even going to be a playoff team? So tell me the state of Houston coming in, especially against a team which I think is a pretty good, I think is a favorable matchup for Houston in the division series. Sorry, I'm not trying to trash the White Sox, but I think it is a favorable matchup for the Astros.
No, I think it is, and I know early in the season when we swept the White Sox at Minute Maid Park, the White Sox were not at full strength, and I think everybody in Houston that just has a pulse and watches games knows that, and knows that at full strength, the White Sox do pose a very potent lineup. They have very good pitching. When their pitchers are on, you have to make sure you barrel the ball, and if you don't, the White Sox are going to shut you down because of the guys they have out in the field. But Lance McCullers Jr. has really taken on the role of ace as he signed a big contract extension this year and has really taken the leadership mantle because coming into the season, JV goes down with Tommy John. Framber Valdez is on the IL to start the season. The Astros have this crazy hot start the first 6 games, and then they're kind of hot, and then they go cold. And then they heat back up. And then we lost Bregman for almost 2 months, and we're like, what's going on? And this team has brought up rookies, AAA players that I would interview them, and the next week they would get called up, and then the next week they would hit grand slams. Jake Myers, Chas McCormick, these guys. Luis Garcia, who is in the Rookie of the Year talk, who probably won't win it because he's not an offensive player. Let's not kid ourselves. But
he's having a good year. He's having a really good year. Yeah.
And this kid, when he gets in trouble, I've seen him get into bases loaded jams and get out of it, and the next inning strike out the next 2 batters. He has got this, we call it the cha-cha slide, motion where he takes like 2 or 3 steps. It's like he's on a dance floor when he's pitching. I think it keeps hitters off balance. But you have Kyle Tucker, who unlocked his swing, where at the beginning of the year, every 115-mile-an-hour ball off the bat was in a glove. He opened up his stance, and he started connecting. And I think, honestly, Kyle Tucker took such a big charge at the end that he deserves some consideration for MVP. Not that he should win it, but that he should get a vote here or there because of what he's meant to this team. Sully, the bullpen has been our biggest worry all season. Our starters have actually held it down very well. Remember, we lost Verlander the year before. We lost Cole, and then like I said, we started the IL with Framber. But you've got Framber, you've got McCullers, you've got Urquidy, who's back and healthy. We lost him for a while, and we've got Luis Garcia, and we've got probably Odorizzi in the pen. We've got Greinke in the pen, at least for the ALDS, because he's not going to make a start right now. He's not ready. But I think Greinke in the pen is an interesting kind of dangerous proposition because he's so masterful. And we have to keep the offense at bay. I think going into the playoffs, watch for Carlos Correa. He just had a big send-off today at Minute Maid Park. There were tears in the fans' eyes. And it was just, Carlos Correa, I think, is going to contribute big time.
So it's interesting. H-Town kind of read my mind a little bit on that one because I'll ask you that too, Chris. What is your biggest concern coming into this series?
I think the health of the starting pitching staff, and I got back, get back to the Rodon thing where you remember that outing down there in Houston with Carlos Rodon where he shut the Astros out for 8 innings, and they ended up losing that game because they weren't playing great baseball, as you said, but that's the guy whose stuff plays anytime, any place. And all of a sudden that guy is gone. I mean, at least we speculate that he's not going to return this year. It's a different type of pitcher. And yeah, when you're in the postseason, you open yourself up to variance, and anything can happen in a short series, but I think you look at what was your biggest strength was your number one ace in Rodon, and now that's not going to be a thing. But there's certainly plenty of things, as any baseball fan knows. You look at your team and you're worried about everything heading into the postseason. But I think when you look at the White Sox, what's the pathway to them losing or getting blown out or just not being competitive? It's usually inconsistent bullpen. The Craig Kimbrell acquisition you guys mentioned, that's been a real shaky going here for pretty much since he got here. Tony La Russa never put him in the closer spot, and we've been talking about that all season long, about how they mismanaged him the entire season. And now you never know what you're going to get from him when they roll him out in the 8th inning. Now, I had speculated that maybe they're going to, when the ninth inning comes, that door opens, Craig Kimbrell's going to be the guy walking out of it. But I'm not so sure now, because they never truly put him in multiple save situations since July. So that's a concern for me. The volatility of the bullpen is always a concern, I think, for any baseball fan. For the Sox specifically, I think that's a big time concern, because Liam Hendricks at the back end is going to get the job done. He's been awesome the past month. He hasn't given up any earned runs the past 30 days. So you feel good about that, but it's the bridge. Getting from that starting pitcher, whoever it's going to be, because Lance Lynn coming off an injury, Giolito you feel pretty good about, but Rodon, Cease, who's going to bridge those guys with the back end of that bullpen? The big mystery right now.
Make sure you check out Locked On White Sox and Locked On Astros. Subscribe to those podcasts ahead of this series. Real quick, fellas, what do you think? Give me your quick picks for this series.
If you're talking about who's going to win the series, I think the Astros win this in 4 games. I think we win 3-1.
Okay. I can't back down now. I picked the White Sox to actually win the World Series, and anyone listens to the show, hey. I'm not White Sox homer guy, but it's what it is. They've withstood all the injuries, and they've managed to stay here, at the point where they're at now. So I'm going to pick the White Sox actually in 4. I think they steal one of the first 2. Wow. And this crowd coming back home on the South Side, they cannot wait. They did not get to see their team in the postseason in 2020, so they cannot wait for postseason baseball, and I think it's going to be a fun atmosphere on the South Side.
Jeff, do you have a pick?
I'm thinking that it's hard to pick these two teams. I honestly think that the White Sox do. Yeah. I think that the White Sox do eke it out, Htown. I don't mean to rain on.
That's okay. Just remember, last year with the sub 500 record, nobody picked us to win anything last year. So just remember that, and we're better this year.
Htown, I want
the White Sox to do anything ever. So.
Htown, I want you and Astros Twitter to hear what I'm about to say. I'm picking the Astros in 5. I think it's a tightly knotted series. I think it could go either way, and I think the bullpen is going to be a factor, but I think Greinke is going to be used the way that Bochy used Lincecum in 2012 as kind of a super reliever, and I think that role worked for Lincecum in 2012, and I think it's going to work for Greinke in 2021. Thanks, Htown. Thanks, everyone. This is going to be a great, and did I mention great series? That's going to be a lot of fun between two evenly matched teams.